crime report, so we can work on that. Talk about any kind of issues anybody's having, address anything that you guys need to talk about. And we'll probably have a bit of a shorter program than we planned. We'll try and reschedule the active shooter program for next month. I apologize for the convenience. Cookies and drinks and stuff by the door. We've got neighborhood watch signs up here for sale for $5 for you know. And I'm gonna turn over to Captain Weitzel, doing the crime report here, so I can let her go.
Talk about anything specific that was going on. Does anybody have any questions about anything in general? That's because I've been following as much as I can, comments on our page and stuff. So does anybody have any questions first before I get started? It really wasn't that crazy of a month. Why did I come up here with my glasses? I'm sorry guys. I actually thought I could read this. I did that last time too.
I have a feeling why it's going to be active money.
Yeah, well, that could be.
Yeah, not a bad thing.
Okay. Now I can see.
Right, they want to what?
We had a few burglaries. What I actually did was pull the reports. You guys know I'm not normally the one who does this report. It's normally either Officer Wagner or Officer Ledbetter, and Wagner's on vacation and it's Ledbetter's day off. So last minute they told me I get to do it. So, which I don't mind. I just I needed to review these reports a little bit more. We had a few burglaries. Nothing that stood out to me like as being I hate to say normal burglaries, but the same kind of things. A lot of it was nobody was home, as is normal with burglaries. We have people don't generally break into houses when other people are there most times. And as I say this, we have a home invasion going on the other side of the city. However, in this area, we had I think 3 burglaries, and I think we did make an arrest on one of them. So that's not bad. Any burglary is bad. Please don't understand. I'm not minimizing, but the number of burglaries for the time of year that it is for the last 30 days wasn't too bad. Let's see. And one of them was of a vacant house too. We did have an aggravated robbery, and this was at Sumatra and Pilgrim. And this was a known suspect to the victim. In other words, he picked him up and gave him a ride, and he gave him a ride to go to the ATM. Well, I'm sure you can imagine what happened after that. This person who he thought he knew pulled a pistol and demanded the money. So we did make an arrest on that one. So even though it was an aggravated robbery, suspect knew the victim, we made an arrest. Then we had another robbery, and it was a robbery of a phone. At First Choice Convenience Store right there at Shaw and Britton. And again, it was somebody who knew the suspect, and suspect came up to him and asked him, I believe, for money. He could borrow money, and then he said he didn't have money because he just spent his last $10 inside the store. And the suspect struck the victim on the head with a closed fist. They began fighting, and the suspect grabbed the victim's phone and fled. So that was worth about $125, they said, the phone. So, you know what, other than that, the other thing that's up, and I noticed it was a couple of them in our area over here, is overdoses. We had been doing really good with overdoses, less overdose deaths, and it seems to have gone a little bit more of an uptick again, and we had a couple, where did I see this? One was on Adelaide, and I think that was intentional, and then one was on Johnlin and on Nicholas, but that's not really. Let's see, we had one on Britton Road. So I guess my point is, Narcan's not always the answer apparently, and there is another uptick of overdoses. I don't really have an explanation for it because Narcan is so widely available. But I didn't pull all the reports for all the various thefts. I think there were about a dozen various thefts throughout the Goodyear Heights District 3 neighborhood in the last month. But honestly, I think it could be a lot more, and I'm gonna give you guys a lot of credit and Christina a lot of credit, because I think the reason why we don't have as much as Maine is a lot of neighborhoods, and again, not minimizing, even one is too many, but I think it's because you guys watch out for each other and people are reporting it. As long as we can keep the Facebook page that's used for what it's intended to, and not the, some of the stuff that goes on that page, but it's supposed to be intended as a broad neighborhood watch, for everybody to look out for each other, post when they see, call us first. Your first thing should be to get on the computer and post it. It should be to call us. We will be getting a ton of shots fired calls, you guys know, it coming this weekend. We've already been getting them. People get their fireworks and they gotta play with them early. A lot of them will be fireworks. Some might not be. A lot of you probably know the difference between the sounds. If it's fireworks, just know we're probably not gonna get to it right away. It's gonna go on the back burner unless it's creating a danger for somebody, because there's so many of them. If it's a shots fired and somebody really knows it is, obviously we're coming as soon as we possibly can. So, keep looking out for each other, because you guys are doing a great job with that. I see the posts about the suspicious people. If I could say one more time, and I've said it before, if you've ever seen me speak, you know I'm big on cameras, I'm big on security cameras. They helped us solve a ton of, really heinous stuff, crimes of any nature, when people, have their security cameras turned on and recording, that's and you know that it's there and you don't report over it, so, you'd be surprised at how much stuff we get off the security, and they're not that expensive anymore, prices have dropped significantly. So I am a big proponent of security cameras, it helps us out a lot, helps you, helps it, I see people posting videos to watch out for this person or that person, maybe not on this particular page, but on a couple of the others. I do have, again, 1/4 of the city, so I follow a lot of the crime stuff in the different neighborhoods. Does anybody have anything specific they wanna mention? Okay.
We weren't home a few days ago, but our son was, and he called. He called me, he said, Mom, this guy's been standing out on the sidewalk in front of the house for 20 minutes. And while we were talking, he said, well, he's leaving now. Should I have just told him to get a description and call you guys? No?
No, somebody standing on the sidewalk is not a reason. If they're looking in cars, walking up driveways, checking doors, doing anything else that raises the level, then yes. Anything that, other than just, because, we are, and I say this a lot, and I don't mean any disrespect, we are still in America. People are allowed to walk on the sidewalk, stand on the sidewalk, but when it crosses that line where it becomes a suspicious activity, then that's when you call.
Okay, so just keep an eye.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
If we're gonna go away, the whole family, for 4 or 5 days, is there a number we can
Yes.
call?
You can call the non-emergency police number, and we'll put in we call it an away from home report, 375-2181, and that will go out to all the district cars. It's a paper copy, they put it in their car, I give it to them at roll call, and and on that report, they're gonna wanna know if there's any lights left on, if there's gonna be any cars left in the driveway, is anybody gonna be coming over, if so, what's their vehicle,
Okay.
that kind of information that we'll ask for, and then we'll check your house
Okay.
while you're gone. You're welcome.
Still illegal to be setting off all these fireworks.
Yes.
And does the city of Akron agree to close a street for fireworks activity if someone petitions for it?
There has been, you can petition to have a street party, so to speak, and is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, you can petition, and I'm sorry, I don't know the number for that. I imagine it's down at, maybe neighborhood assistance would know. John
I
knows.
object.
You and that daggone phone.
Stop.
Well, as I said before, you can call us, and if we hear it too, if we're out there, we're gonna come and check it out and tell them. But you have to understand that there's so much of that goes on, and there's, I don't wanna cry that we don't have enough, but obviously you want us handling the burglary in progress more than you'd want us handling the fireworks know the fireworks are annoying, the burglary in progress or the robbery or something of that nature. But yeah, I mean, fireworks are annoying, especially when they're, you know, in the middle of the night. You can call us.
Well, these aren't, this is usually a house that has a party, and they start the fireworks at 2 in the afternoon, and they go until midnight. And it's just not a random one, it is unloading and sweeping the street of debris 4 or 5 times.
Call us and when the crews will come out and have a talk with them.
When I called last year, I couldn't get through.
Well, it's not, did you call the non-emergency number 375?
281.
Well, I can't answer to what happened last year.
Okay.
Try this year and see what happened.
Okay.
Speaking of fireworks, I just thought of something. For those of you that are animal lovers as I, the 4th of July and the surrounding days are horrible for the pound. People don't secure their animals or they'll get spooked and they'll break through a fence. If your fence isn't secure, keep your animals inside if you can when there's fireworks, please. Because the pound's gonna get overloaded again. People aren't gonna wanna pay the fines to come down and pick up their dogs, and then I don't know what's gonna happen. So it's not safe for them. They're out here running the streets, and we do have access to the pound to take dogs, you know, when we pick them up, but they only have so many holding areas. And they're safer there than they are running the street, but we don't wanna have to do that. So I put out that kind of information all the time, the 4th of July, and it's not just, it's everywhere, it's across the country. Animals are getting very, very afraid with fireworks, so please, if you can, if you're an outside dog, make sure they're absolutely secured, their fence is secured, wherever you have them chained to is absolutely secured. Although there's tethering laws, and I won't go into that, but take your dog inside if you can, when there's fireworks going on. So that's the only other thing I have to say about that. Christine?
Yeah, could you address with, I've been seeing some posts on our group that I find a little concerning that almost are addressing, you know, verging on let's go out and be vigilantes and
Yeah.
start roaming the neighborhoods armed and then not cool.
Yeah.
So, could you?
You've done a very good job of trying to mute that, and I appreciate it. I mean, everybody has a right to their opinion, and you can run your page how you want, and unless it creates a violent situation, but, I mean, come on, that's not what the page is intended for, and that, anybody who thinks that they can go out there and just, you know, arm themselves and we're not doing anything and handle it, you're just gonna be the one that's gonna end up with your butt sitting in Summit County Jail. I can't be any more blunt than that. I get that you're frustrated, that some people, not you, I get that there are frustrated people out there. I'm frustrated too at times, but you gotta let us handle it. You can't incite anything that even rises to the level of potential violence, because you're just creating more of a problem for us. Now we gotta handle you, and we couldn't handle the problem that we should have been handling initially. So I would encourage all of you guys not to feed into that either. If you're not the ones feeding into it, you're not saying anything, please don't feed into that. And it's amazing to me how brave people get behind a keyboard. And it's, you know, but that's not good for anyone. We're all adults, let's act like it. I guess that's my message. Anything else you want me to say to that? I mean, you can remove those comments.
Yeah.
And should.
And have, and actually gotten people screaming that we're censoring.
It's your page.
I know.
Censor away. It's your page. You know, it's not owned by anybody but you. If you're the administrator, you can censor your page. They have a right to say what they want. They can say it on their own page. They don't have to say it on your page. So, you know, that was what I would encourage you to remove those comments. That's your page. You have a right to control whatever is on your Facebook page that you created. And people get so into their rights. You do have a right. You can make a Facebook page and post what you want, but don't do it on Christina's page. So, I don't know. That frustrates me. We try to do what we can out here, guys. We really are. I hate it when people say, we're doing our best. But I have put so many extra resources. You would not believe, I have the 11 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. shift. No captain ever has put out a sector car up here as much as I have in the last 4 months or so, 2 months, 3 months, however it's long. If I have an extra body, which isn't all the time, but if I have an extra body, they're up here. I can promise you that. That's where I put them. And I don't know if you've seen them or not, but.
I have seen the increased patrols and it is appreciated.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, that is.
Yep.
And I've told them, this is my zone. This is, I have North Hill and I have Elliott. But when I have an extra car and I put them in a sector car, I always tell them to concentrate around this park. Concentrate in this area. If you can, they're gonna get pulled for calls up in North Hill and over in Elliott, and I get that. We do have our issues on both places. But, I wanna make sure that we're keeping all of my zones safe. But because we've had some issues here, this is where we've been targeting. So, does anybody else have anything directly you wanna talk about? Or any question directly about anything around here, or anything that's going on in the police department? We are hiring right now. We are in the process, the last couple of days, of doing, today and tomorrow, our physical fitness assessments for our new academy class. And we are hoping to put on an academy of 40 people by the end of November. So that's super exciting for me, because that means come spring, I might actually get some relief and get some extra people on my shift and be able to deploy more resources without having to continually deny people their days off and that kind of thing, which is no fun. I hate telling people no, they can't have a day off. But I got a job to do. So we do have that going on. I gotta always leave with something positive, so to me that's positive. Does anybody have anything else positive? That's what it's, pretend you're my roll call, this is what I'll say. Does anybody have anything positive they wanna share before we hit the streets? And, go ahead.
Captain, just a quick question. So you're hiring 40 cops hopefully soon. What's your authorized manpower?
I believe it's 487, I believe. You know what? Oh, authorized and or budgeted.
Authorized.
Those are two different numbers.
Okay, let's start with authorized.
Authorized used to be, and they changed it, city council changes it, but I believe last time it was a little over 500. Authorized, yeah, and then budgeted is like around 487, I believe, and that number might have changed too, recently, but that's about where it's at, so.
And do you think you're approximately 40 officers below that 487, or are you?
We will
below
be,
that?
we will be. We have a lot of retirements too, and just, we're losing people left and right to retirements and stuff, because, I think I mentioned last time, we had a lot of big classes back in the late 80s and early 90s, and, I was one of those. I could actually retire in December, but I'm not going anywhere. I just love the city too much to leave. But, so I think that what we're gonna do is, the city has promised to keep us, hiring classes of 35 to 40, because that's how quickly we're gonna be losing them to those retirements, to get us to budgeted strength and keep us there. That's what their promise to us has been. So, let's hope they
And
do
so,
it.
how many officers do you think you have on now, approximately?
I got one leaving again, another one leaving this week.
I won't hold you. to it.
Yeah, please don't hold me to the number, but I wanna say high 440s, maybe 450. I wish I knew those numbers offhand, I don't.
Okay.
'Cause that's not part of my day-to-day thing that I get to worry, I get to worry about who's on my shift, so I apologize, I don't.
I understand, that's all right.
But that's kind of what I gleaned from hearing from other, meetings. So, anything else? You guys are easy on me tonight. Last time I was here, it was a little more difficult.
I was just gonna say thank you for having care and concern for this.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
Well,
not- it's
and
not-
I, honestly, I grew up on Alaho, which isn't that far from here. And then I've lived in Elliott, other than, we just moved 3 years ago, almost my whole life, in the Goodyear Heights area too. So, that could be part of it. I just have a real love for this area, so, we'll try to do my best to make sure you guys get the service you need. If you ever have any needs, you know that either Wagner or Ledbetter's actually your NRT officer out here, but Wagner helps out just as much, or me. We will make sure that we get whatever it is you guys need, we'll get it handled. You just gotta know about it. So continue to look out for each other, continue to monitor the page and be diligent about, not engaging those who want to ramp up the rhetoric, please, and,
know, every once in a while, a cop will hide in the Jehovah's Witness church, they'll catch them coming back, and they can't see.
You know what the problem is with dirt bikes? For us?
Get away from it.
I don't know how we can get them, how we can catch them unless, we can't get into the
Well,
woods.
it's kinda in the area where it's dead end.
If we can
it's
see where
dark.
they pull, yeah, I'll make sure I'll put some resources down on Gary. And if we can find where they, if we can find it, see them on the road and find where they go to, absolutely.
They go down east, but go back on the hill.
Okay,
And for just go brush between too.
yeah, that's dangerous, it is, you know, they don't pay attention to
They're
kids.
flying, and of course, it's in our camps flying everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah, passing cars on the wrong side, et cetera.
yeah, that's very dangerous for them. Anything else? Alright, you guys, you've been great. I wish you would have been able to see that presentation tonight. Lori Nacco does an amazing job, but as soon as you, please make sure that you are here when she finally is able to make it, because she's fantastic. And she's gonna will give you a lot of good information that you can use, and it's very useful. I have a couple of announcements. Actually, one's really good. We are doing a food truck fair up on Goodyear Boulevard. For the 17th of August, we've got 3 trucks coming. One a shaved ice truck, a barbecue ribs truck, and one that does, it's called a scratch truck. They do a lot of chicken dishes and things. We're bringing in some food vendors that sell things like hot sauce and cookies and things like that, and some craft vendors too. They'll be in the 2 parking lots, the corner of Minodal and Goodyear Boulevard. So that should be a lot of fun. Hope everybody can come up for that. If you are a vendor, you are welcome. It's not gonna cost you anything to be one. This is kind of our first year putting a toe into the arena to see how this goes, so all bets are off on cost to set up. So hopefully we'll see how that goes, and we'll have a good one. We can really go big or go home next year. And as Captain Beitzel said on the watch page, it is for criminal issues. This is not, finder of lost pets and I need a roommate. We have 3 officers monitoring that page, and it becomes a case of boy who cried wolf when they see 8 million posts about something unrelated and they stop looking. So we have other pages for that. There are a lot of lost pet pages. We also have Goodyear Heights Community Action Group page. The Right Committee has a page, and Goodyear Heights, Ohio has a page. You want to talk about those things there, please enjoy. And last but not least, we have a guest speaker tonight, since we weren't able to have our active shooter presentation. This gentleman comes from a security company, and I'm gonna have
Rich Hart.
Rich is gonna come up and talk to us about some concealed carry issues, laws, training, all that, and if you give him his attention, I appreciate it.
How's everyone doing tonight? Good. All right, thanks for having me. I've known John quite a while, and he asked me to come talk to you guys, answer some questions. I popped in a couple minutes late. I missed the beginning of the captain's presentation. There's some stuff in there as well. I jotted down some notes that I'll try to address. 2-minute down and dirty about myself. I currently own and operate Lampus Security Consulting. Not only do we do active shooter training, we also do medical training, firearms training on many different levels. We also help people and organizations with their physical security concerns, like your alarms, like your video cameras, things like that. We even do things like youth marksmanship and firearm safety programs as well. So prior to working in security consulting full-time, I spent 12 years at the Kansas City Police Department full-time. 6 of that was spent on their SWAT team. Approximately 15 months ago, I left there to pursue training and consulting work full-time. I still serve as a police officer part-time with Marlboro Township, which is just west of Alliance, and I'm also on the Alliance multi-jurisdictional SWAT team as well. It's just a short down and dirty about myself. What the leader of your organization, she mentioned that specifically this is about CCW questions and how to obtain it, things surrounding it. I can absolutely answer those questions, but there's also other questions I want you guys to feel free to ask about personal readiness, personal physical security, things of that nature. So, not exactly where you guys want to take this. What do I have, about 30 minutes?
You actually have more time than we thought, because our active shooter training canceled because of family emergency, so you have a little bit more time.
What, if you have any idea, what kind of topics were they gonna discuss for the active shooter training?
I saw the active shooter training when they did the block captain thing, and it really was talking about the ALICE system and how to implement it, which was really interesting. They did some demonstrations, it was good.
Okay, implement it with what type of organization? Schools, businesses?
This was really looking in terms, I think, of schools and businesses. What they were looking at the time, I mean, they had a bunch of block captains. They were, you know, hey, you're in a building, you have a shooter, this, and how do you handle it? And so, I mean, it was very general, it wasn't a specific.
Yeah, that's a giant ball of string that
Right.
you can get into. I also do active shooter training as well, with hospitals, schools, different organizations, things like that. So if you have any questions that I can try to attempt to answer briefly on that, I can. So,
You could maybe briefly go over the ALICE idea with folks. That's probably a good place to start, and I'll get them ready for what we're gonna see. And then I'm gonna try and schedule this for next month.
let's just kind of start out generally, why I was invited here. I've been teaching concealed carry now for 15 years. Who in here has a CCW? Okay, a good amount of us. Who is interested in getting a CCW that doesn't have one? Okay, a handful. Of those that have got your concealed carry license, who goes out and trains? Okay, I got one of those. When was the last time you were at the range?
Memorial Day. My mom and dad have property down south, so we probably shoot down there.
Okay. Folks in the back, what about you guys? Once a month, good. About the same?
I go probably once every month and a half to 2 months.
Okay. So who has their concealed carry license that hasn't shot in the last 6 months? Be honest. 1, 2. Okay. All right. One of the big problems that I see with concealed carry students that come through my class, and this is just, you know, the mass of society that comes through. This isn't any specific individual, individual gender, age, things like that. Normally when people come to a concealed carry class, they come to the class, and if they actually follow through and get their concealed carry license, that's where it stops. When CCW first came into effect 15 plus years ago, the class used to be 12 hours. And in my class, I'm a professional, you're there for the total time. The total time that you're there, you're getting information. So when the state knocked a 12-hour class down to 8 hours, how much information do you think I cleaved from my program just to shorten it 4 hours? I mean, massive amounts. You know, so not only did the classroom portions get cut, but also the range portions. So that's something to consider too, the amount of training you're actually getting in a concealed carry class. Now they're talking about the constitutional carry in Ohio. And I'm all for the Second Amendment, and I'm all for people being able to protect themselves. But like the captain said, when people go out there and they start wanting to do the whole vigilante thing, you know, it's going to end badly for a lot of people. Most likely the person that's attempting to do what they believe is right. So my big thing is to educate people on, you know, things far beyond concealed carry. You know, your personal security, situational awareness, where you're at, what you're doing, things of that nature. What I would like to see out of CCW, out of the students that I teach, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen the trend, again, where people come take a class, if they even follow through and get their CCW license, which many don't, they get the license, and then that's it. You know, they think they spent 8 hours and became a gunfighter, vigilante, and then that's it. The most important thing about concealed carry training and firearms training or firearms use, whether it's at the range, safety-wise, or whether it's out in the real world, is that you get further training. I can't beat that to death enough. Because a lot of concealed carry holders have gotten jammed up because they're not educating themselves outside of the class, and they're not continuing their education. So, unfortunately, if I use unfortunately relative, if constitutional carry does take place in Ohio, I'm for the idea, but I'm not necessarily for its implementation, just due to the lack of uneducated people, you know, running around the streets, for lack of a better term, with firearms. Does that make sense? You know, and I'm trying to be reasonable with this, with the amount of time that I do have. This whole thing is a giant rabbit hole that we can get lost in. So, personally, and this isn't a publicity thing for my company, you know, whatever, I personally do 1 8-hour class a month, and then 2 4-hour weeknights. So it's like 4 hours on a Monday, 4 hours on a Wednesday type thing. I don't know, I'm really Canton and Alliance based, not really familiar with the Akron area. Have some really good friends in Akron PD though. So I'm not excessively familiar with this area, the good areas, the bad areas and whatnot. But, you know, I want you guys to keep yourself safe and understand the risks out there and what you can do to attempt to prevent yourself from being a victim somehow. So, if you guys want to kind of throw some general questions out there, I can attempt to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
You said about an 8-hour class, but you had to cut 4 hours worth of information. Do you have an additional class that provides that information, or do you direct people to find it?
So, basically, I will do anything and everything. But personally, me organizing, I guess, supplemental classroom training, if it's strictly classroom, I can absolutely do that. But normally I do things like that for organizations. You know, if everyone in this room wanted to come into this classroom one night for 4, 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever you want to do, I can put that together and I can make it happen. I would love to still teach 12-hour classes because I think it's important. But, you know, if I still taught 12-hour class and everyone else is 8, if they're doing the right thing, you know, I'm gonna just be another guy out there. You know, and I said, if they're doing the right thing, there's plenty of concealed carry instructors that have gotten trouble for having students come in for 4 hours, they talk about guns, they sign a piece of paper, here you go. So, that's not professional, and it's reckless on their part. So, you know, if you by chance want more classroom things like that, you can contact me. I can give you my business card after this. But that's more something that I would tell an organization to put together, not so much myself with my company. Now I do offer advanced CCW classes and advanced CCW classes, and I use advanced, you know, very loosely, but a natural progression in what people should be doing for their firearms training. So, does that kind of answer your question? Yes, ma'am.
What does Ohio law deem as the requirements to have a concealed carry? What all is covered in this class? What all kind of certification, documentation do you need to have to go about getting that?
Sure. I can only speak on my 8-hour program. First, when people come in, regardless of their background, regardless of their experience, everyone's on the same field. And it's very common that people come to a class, they think that they know everything about guns, and you know, when you ask them questions, they truly have no idea or give a very basic or just inaccurate answer. In my program, we go over firearm safety, weapons handling, marksmanship skills. We discuss different firearms that you may or may not like, strengths and weaknesses of them. We go out and we do the shooting range portion, which will take approximately 2 hours depending on the class size. I personally normally max out my students at 15. And that's because normally there's a second instructor there. I want the people that come through my class to get one-on-one time, so when they leave, they're at least somewhat prepared to go out in the world and face what they have to face, even if they don't get any supplemental training. So there's a whole ball of wax involved in that. If you look at things like the state obviously drives all of the CCW law, all of the requirements. You know, they decided to make the 12-hour class into 8 hours. So there goes away 4 hours of potential classroom education, hands-on, gun safety, marksmanship skills. Currently, the state of Ohio has no set shooting standard for what makes someone qualified to shoot a gun.
So there's no range qualifications once you're out there?
You have to shoot, but basically that looks like discharging a firearm in the general direction of the big paper target. It's just kind of one of those things. You know, the state obviously wants to make this obtainable for people, but I also personally feel as an educator that they could do more, even a set qualification. You know, you have to pass the driver's ed test. That's kind of a loose comparison that I try to make for it. So, does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
Do you teach the security firearms course, and if so or if not, do you see any benefit to taking that one versus the CCW, the standard CCW?
Like the OPATA,
Yeah.
armed security. Do you work in armed security?
No, I don't. I mean, I have before. I mean, I've gone through that class versus the regular CCW. So that's why I'm asking. I've never been to a regular CCW. It's always been the OPATA one.
Sure. You know, more or less that's on you. If anyone in here has a specific skill set that would negate them from taking concealed carry class, you know, by all means do that. There are things written in the law. If you're a veteran of a certain, I think it's 3 or 5 years off the top of my head, I can't recall. If you're a veteran of 3 to 5 years, you don't have to take a concealed carry class in that. The problem with that, though, is when you look at a veteran with military training, with a military mindset, you do things a military way and maybe not a state of Ohio legal way or way of thinking. You know, so rules of engagement overseas in a war is completely different than the laws in the state of Ohio, you know, surrounding legal use of force for civilians. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was
So-
just, well, I guess what I was speaking to is, you're talking about how you had to cut 4 hours off, and there's a lot of weapons handling and different things like that. With the security firearms class, you do have to do, you know, offhand shooting, barrier shooting, things like that. You know, for someone in here that wants to get as much training possible and to have a better skill set than just the general CCW class, is that a benefit for them versus the regular CCW?
I would say no.
Okay.
When you look at who, and I'm not, I'm aware of what you're talking about, but I'm not super familiar with that exact program. Who's eligible to do it? Who would that actually be tailored to? Because OPATA, which is the organization that governs police training in Ohio and security training, you know, your grandma probably wouldn't want to do that, but your grandma would maybe Also too, I don't know if there's varying levels or advancement in that training, but if you would take a basic CCW class, or if you took armed security class, you know, you can always supplement that training with further training. It's just who you are, what your necessity is, and what kind of training do you find most valuable to you. So because there might be things in that class that's discussed with the context of armed security, and context is huge. You know, whether you're an instructor that came out of the military, their context of teaching is completely different than only civilian firearm trainer or a firearm trainer coming out of the law enforcement background. So a lot of it is just context, context, context. What works here, what might not work there. And how long is that course? Do you recall off the top of your head?
4 hours, I think.
You know, so it's a 3-day class. Not a lot of people can block off, 3 days with their schedule right now. Maybe 3 days over an extended period of time, but not right then. Talking about state standards, a lot of people don't realize the minimum standard that Ohio has for police officers to carry a gun in the state of Ohio is 25 rounds a year. So a police officer shoots 25 rounds a year at a max of 50 feet, and that's it. It's a couple hours of a day. And that's my experience in Kansas City PD, and that's my true knowledge and understanding of many other police officers on many other police departments. I can't speak on Akron and their training program. So there's a huge variety in training that's out there, but what's suitable for one person might not be suitable for another. So, can I answer your question? What else? Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. Are CCW state specific? If you have one in Ohio, can you carry somewhere else or no?
Okay, I'll address that. What's your second question?
Second question has to do with obtaining the CCW. So a lot of people tend to get it and then forget it, and don't continue their training. There's no renewal process, and if so, how do you track? I assume you have to have a clean background check when you get a CCW. So somebody gets one, 4 years later they have a felony. Is it just taken away when they have that felony?
Sure.
Okay.
It would kind of be like a suspended driver's license, for lack of a better term. So, what you're first referring to is reciprocity with other states. What reciprocity with other states means is if you have a concealed carry license in the state of Ohio and another state recognizes Ohio's CCW law, you can then carry a gun. Florida, for instance, they have reciprocity with Ohio. So if you visit Florida, you can carry a gun in Florida. If a Florida resident visits Ohio, the Florida resident can carry a gun in Ohio. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you have to do your homework and check wherever you might be traveling to.
Homework is relative because a lot of the information is out there. If you guys go on the Ohio Attorney General's website, which is ohioattorneygeneral.gov, I believe, down at the bottom of the screen, there's like CCW law link, you click it, and they have not only a huge map with colored states that say reciprocity is okay here, but they also have the actual letters of reciprocity agreements.
Looks like this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, ask this guy. Your second question, renewal and stuff like that. So the Ohio CCW class, you have 3 years to get that license. So if you take the class, you don't get your license in 3 years, you have to take it again. The CCW license is good for 5 years. So after you apply with the Sheriff's Department of the county you live in or any bordering county, you get that license, it's good for 5 years. You have to take like your application, your class certificate, some money, some passport photos, things like that. They issue your license. And when the law first came into effect, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was every year or every couple years, you had to find a CCW instructor, you didn't have to take the whole class over, but you had to reshoot and show proficiency. And I
So
used to
essentially
shoot-
recertify.
Right. But, and it was just shooting, so if that instructor's shooting qualification is shoot 5 rounds at a 8-inch paper plate at 10 feet away, you know, then that's that, and he's done. So there's a huge, a ton of room there for what is qualified and what isn't. So,
Basically, they still haven't gotten the system down to a point where it can't be fudged yet.
I'm sorry, as far as what?
As far as you're qualifying from trainer to trainer, one trainer can say, you fire 5 shots, you hit the plate twice, you're qualified. Another person can say, I need you to make that same shot but 20 times and at a greater distance, and you only hit it twice, so you fail.
No standard.
Right.
No such standard.
There's no such thing.
And that's exactly it, there is no set standard, which, you know, have I failed a lot of people in the 15 years I've been teaching? No, very few. And normally when I do, I mean, I'm talking like 5 or 6 people in 15 years. You know, you have to make the standard obtainable for a brand new shooter. Brand new shooter comes through a class, never picked up a gun in their life. They took the class. The state basically says, they took the class. If you don't have any real reason to deny them, then give them the certificate. And until the state tells CCW instructors what they need to be doing, a lot of it's willy-nilly. You know, like I said before, there's been instructors that have gotten serious trouble for doctoring state legal documents. So, and again, I don't care if you would ever take my class or take anyone else's class. Find out, make sure it's an 8-hour class, 1. Ask for their background, ask for continuing education, ask for other certificates. Because you could walk off the street, pay a couple $100 to the NRA, and sit through a 2-day or 3-day NRA pistol instructor class, and all of a sudden you're an NRA pistol instructor, and you can teach CCW in the state of Ohio. You know, with 3 days of gun experience. I mean, not that that probably happens a lot, but it could. So make sure you know who you're training with, whether the class actually meets all the legal requirements, and who they are, their background, their actual certification. Any instructor that's worth a grain of salt, when you ask for a resume, a list of professional development training, other varied instructor certificates, they'd be more than happy to give it to you. So, yes ma'am.
Okay, currently, I'm interested in what the advantage of having a concealed carry would be, because right now, I could probably go home, slap my 22 on my waist and walk around and not have any kind of problem anywhere.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
So, basically you're talking about concealed carry versus open carry.
You would have.
A lot of people don't realize that Ohio is an open carry state, which means if you want to sling your AK-47 over your shoulder and go walking down the street, it's completely legal and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. I
That'll go with well
don't
age.
believe that's a good idea, because a lot of people do it strictly out of politics or to bring awareness to, you know, the gun rights cause, which I fully support the gun rights cause, but I also am not going to march down the street with a rifle slung over my shoulder. The big thing is, yes, you can walk down the street walking your dog with a gun completely exposed to the world.
Right.
That's completely legal. Once you enter into or on a motor vehicle, which motor vehicles include motorcycles and horses and other such things. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
You're now in violation of state law because you are carrying a weapon inside of a vehicle and you're not allowed to.
Don't you usually have to have like your ammunition and your gun separate and under lock with transport, it's.
Correct. That kinda, I mean, and that's one tiny, I guess, benefit. Obviously concealing a gun, no one sees it. And I think with open carry, it just draws negative attention to yourself. I'm sure the captain can attest that, oh my God, Akron Police Department, and there's a guy walking down the street with a gun. Uh-huh. Just like, she said, there's a guy standing on the street. What's suspicious about that guy? Absolutely nothing. If the police come out and say, hey, what are you doing here? That guy could say, absolutely nothing. Standing on a corner, not minding my own business. And if he doesn't want to talk to the police, he doesn't have to. He could walk off. And there's nothing the police can do about it. So, I just think it draws negative attention to yourself. What if someone wants to push the issue, whether they're anti-gun or whether they're a thug and want to try to intimidate you? It can just escalate things. So, plus, I guess in a worst case scenario, it gives up that element of surprise. So, yes, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want people to be misled. I'm CCW holder, but I haven't been to the range. I got a new gun, long story. I don't want anyone to take the class to think that they can have their gun in the car and go to Pennsylvania, especially Pennsylvania. Because if they, from what I understand, Pennsylvania, maybe somebody's got more current law, because the laws change quick, that you will go to jail and do not pass $200 or whatever.
That's New York.
New York?
New York is the one you don't want to come to.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But, and you can't transport it, just, throw it in your car. So take the class and pay attention to the class and stay current on the laws because they change.
She's absolutely spot on with that, and from my understanding, Pennsylvania does have reciprocity with Ohio, but that reciprocity agreement could go away tonight, and if you're traveling in that state, you still have to abide by their laws. I use this analogy a lot. You have a pistol that holds 15 bullets, and you go to California, and let's assume that they have reciprocity, which they don't. But California still has a 10-round magazine wall, which you can only put 10 bullets in your semi-automatic pistol. But you go there and you have a 15-round magazine. You're abiding by their CCW law, but you're breaking their other firearms law. And I can't spend a ton of time talking about that, but just, you need to be aware of the laws where you're going. Yes,
Do
ma'am?
you think that, okay, when we got our CCWs, both of us, we had to actually take part of a day off of work to go get it? Do you think that that's part of the reason that your students are not pursuing this? And what do you think? Is there any way to change that, because that's ridiculous?
All right, so to change that, you're gonna have to talk to state politicians. The state, and I can't speak on the exact hours, exact days, et cetera, et cetera. The local sheriff, and again, you can apply in the sheriff's, at the sheriff's department of the county you live in, or any bordering county. Every sheriff has to offer a certain amount of hours every week that they are open for business to accept applications. The problem is that time convenient for people that work? Are they only open Monday, Wednesdays, and you only have Tuesdays off? I don't know. So the time, the amount of time, even the resources. The good captain, said multiple times, resources, and how do you distribute them? And it's the same way with the sheriff's department. I know plenty of deputies that's all that they do is great, that they can't get time off, they can't get vacation, they're getting forced over just because, there's, Akron's loosely 50 cops short, ish. So it's just kind of one of those things. And I personally believe though, if it's a priority to someone, they'll make it on. And, you
It's
know,
not a priority to their bosses though, that's the problem,
yeah,
you know?
you know,
I think you took a point when you took off.
paid time off, sick days, you know, doctor's appointment and CCW appointment, all in one day. Still counts as a sick day, so. What else? Yes, sir.
I had one comment about the CCW classes. Now, when I went through my CCW, I believe you know Joey Water from
Know
Alliance.
Joe very well, close
I went
personal
through
friend.
his 12-hour class back in 2014, and he gave a lot of information. With the CCW, you get to carry your gun and it's concealed, but that doesn't allow you to pull it out and use it at any given time. Along with your CCW, you're supposed to avoid incidents if possible. Get clear from the incidents if possible. Hiding. The last resort is always to pull your gun. Because then, if you're not in the right, you're totally in the wrong. You're gonna even be worse off than that aggressor that was coming at you. You cannot do that. Everybody thinks when they grab a CCW up, they have a right to do whatever they want. There are rules, there are laws. They can be taken away very quick. I had a friend that had to shoot one of the neighbors down there on Gaskill in Alliance a few years ago. He bought a cheap gun. And I won't name the gun because they don't really sell them no more. But his gun jammed. And the other guy continued firing at him. He only had a pellet gun. But the clue was gun. And he had kids. And they were shooting the windows out at his house. He ran back in, grabbed another gun that he could count on, came out and shot the guy in the knee. Now, he got charged. He did spend the night in jail. But the council found him not guilty of the charge, and he was still able to retain his life and his guns and his CCW. That's why I say, when you use a gun, you've got to make sure that you understand what you're doing. It's not something to play around with.
And that's, I'm glad you bring that up. There's plenty of people out there, you know, they want to get a concealed carry license because they're scared, because they're nervous, because they're fearful. Maybe they have no intention on getting concealed carry or getting the license, but they want to take the class because they want to learn firearm safety and use it in their home for home defense. That's the thing. You know, that's another thing too. Very few people actually go out and carry a gun 24/7 when they're outside their house. I carry a gun for a living, and I'm wired a little bit differently than, you know, random civilians. But I carry a gun 97% of my life. It's not comfortable. It's a pain in the butt. But, you know, you just can't carry a gun and pull a gun out and, you know, intentionally menace someone with a firearm just because you're scared. Ohio Supreme Court stated 3 things must be proven to be justified using lethal force. And I would argue using lethal force or even displaying a firearm or pointing at someone. And that is, you had no duty to retreat, which means you have to run away or do the best that you can to run away unless you're in your home, your vehicle, or another vehicle of a household member. So cars, and that's not considered property at that point in time. It's like an area of safety. Or your home. So if you're not in your car or your home, you have to try to run away. And if you can't run away, obviously that's reasonable for any number of things. So you can't have a duty to retreat. You can't create the situation. And you have to have a realistic expectation of death or serious physical harm. And let me repeat, serious physical harm. Getting punched in the face is physical harm. Getting punched in the face may not be serious physical harm. And then comes the argument, well, how do you know when they're going to stop? Well, that's the responsibility that you take upon yourself when you pick up a gun and you want to defend yourself. And I discuss this a lot in my CCW classes, I expect. I talk about the law, I talk about even the moral aspects of this, and the mental aspects of it. You know, if one person leaves my concealed carry class and they said, you know what, Rich, great class, thanks, but I'm not gonna get a CCW license, you opened up my eyes, I'm like, great, I did my job. You know, because I'm not the person out there, yeah, go pick up a gun, go handle business, go do the Lord's work, or, you know, whatever it is. People really need to sit down and be cautious. I'm super supportive of the Second Amendment and gun rights and right to carry and all that. But I just want people to be educated, people understand all of these things. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have to have a concealed carry if you just have a gun in your house?
No.
Okay. Because you're not carrying it, you're just having it in your house. Because you can have one in your house in case somebody's coming to hurt you, you can shoot it up in the air, right? Like straight up in the
Are
air.
you in fear for your life? That's the question.
Right, so,
That's not a question. This was when I was a child and I seen a man with a long knife blade that was like in my brother's back. And we had a shared driveway and the knife was on my brother's back. And my parents pulled him in the driveway as that was happening. My dad grabbed his rifle and shot it up in the air so that the guy that had the knife in his back would leave. No, do you have to have a concealed carry to have a gun in your house?
okay, you know, we're kind of talking about two separate things here, you know, whether you need license for certain things and responsible firearm usage and ownership. You don't need a license to keep a gun in your home for personal protection. But you also don't necessarily have the right to start discharging firearms in the air. Firing warning shots is not acceptable. One, for firearm safety, that bullet's going to come down somewhere. And when bullets come down, they can kill people. Not anyone that gets hit with a round coming straight down, but it's happened. It absolutely can happen.
But you're saying it's a serious physical threat, and that's a serious physical threat. My parents pulled in the knife blade.
Okay,
They had my
so-
brother over the back of a car with
Sure.
a knife blade in his back.
Okay, well, you know, again, I can't speak on that exact situation, but the three things, again, are you had no duty to retreat,
Mhm.
where you did everything in your power to retreat. You didn't create the situation, and you had to have that realistic expectation of death or serious physical harm. Now, you can protect anyone you want. You can protect a complete stranger, but you have to be aware of every single fact. So, in theory, your dad rolls up, you know, pulls up on your brother with a knife, a guy with a knife to your brother's back. Say your brother started it and your dad shot this guy, now your dad's in deep trouble.
No, he didn't shoot anybody. He
Well, no,
brought it
I'm
up
just
and
saying,
pointed it
if,
up to the sky
if
so
it
that
went
people
that
would
route,
run
if
away.
your brother started that, and this isn't, you know, anything having to do with your story, if by chance your brother started that, and your son, or excuse me, your father defended your father has a serious chance of getting in legal trouble with that. So,
Well, if you pulled into your driveway and that's what you saw, that's all you saw and that's all you know.
then it's not enough. You
And you're
have to be
protecting
aware.
your property as well.
You can never use lethal force to protect property alone. So,
I mean, I used to sit in my house when I was like 10 years old, or actually around 12 when they started leaving me at home alone to go out. So my parents had to start to go out to do whatever they need to do when they get home alone. And I would lock the doors and I would sit in my living room and I'd go up under the window and sit because people would be doing drive-by shootings sometimes while they were gone. And there was no protection in the house, none. And I just had to sit there and hope that the bullets didn't hit me.
and that's, you know, that's a,
So we lived in a situation, it was right over across 6 corners on Kipton, is where I grew up.
and that's a perfect example of, you know, you can take certain actions to limit your exposure to risk. You know, again, if you had a basement, you could go in the basement. You know, and this is again a whole ball of wax, but there's certain things that through education, people can,
They didn't teach us that in elementary school. They
Well,
taught us
right.
the tornado drill. They taught us to go to the wall and sit down Indian style and face the wall and stay there till the tornado was over. So whenever it happened, I did what I was taught in school because that's the only thing I was taught,
right.
was a tornado drill.
What else? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
This isn't about CCW. Are you allowed, and if you are allowed, how do you do it? You want to take like a rifle from your home, go to, say my dad's house, and target shoot. How do I do that and still be in the car, in my car?
Okay, so if you're not licensed to carry a concealed handgun,
Right.
you can't transport any loaded firearm in the car. You can never transport loaded long guns. So the big thing is have the ammunition, or have the gun unloaded first, and have the ammunition and the firearm stored separately.
So you're allowed to do it as long as it's not loaded and they're separate? Okay.
You know, that's the best way to do it. And again, you know, that could vary, you know, region to region, wherever you're going. So it's just, you know, I'm giving you the best information that I have with my knowledge, training, and experience. So, what else?
Got one?
Yes.
It's actually a little bit off of concealed carry, but could you explain castle doctrine to everybody? Because I think it's, we are filming this for our Facebook group, and it's probably
Okay.
valuable information for people to have.
What the castle doctrine is it states that you don't have, quote, a duty to retreat, unquote, from your home, your vehicle, or the vehicle owned by an immediate family member. Immediate family member is the way that it's worded. You know, generally speaking, immediate family member is regarded as a household member. So it's kind of one of those things. What if you have a rental car? You know, what if your great aunt is visiting from Florida and you're driving her car, or a passenger in her car? So that's just one of those gray areas of the law. You know, so you don't have a duty to retreat from your vehicle or the vehicle owned by an immediate family member. You don't have a duty to retreat from your home. Before castle doctrine became a thing in Ohio, if you shot someone in your home, the other attorney that wants to get you in trouble, could be the prosecutor or could be the other attorney, they could ask, why didn't you leave your home? Or why didn't you try and leave your home? They may have asked it, they may not have, but they could have. Now that's completely off the table. So, and the whole point of the castle doctrine is, it's a last area that you can get to, that you can protect yourself. Again, you can never use lethal force to protect the property alone, and a lot of times people kind of, okay, well, there's a guy breaking into my car in the driveway, it's property then. You know, if you were in it, if other people were in it, then it would be an area of safety. And in short, that's all the castle doctrine means, is you don't have to leave your vehicle or your home. That's it. It doesn't give you any super duper powers to just shoot someone because they're in your home. And you know, I know this is going to be videotaped, and I know it's going to be put on the internet, and everyone's going to have an opinion. Was it you, John, said, you know, something about everyone with a keyboard, blah blah blah?
No.
I said that.
Okay. And that's a perfect example of, you know, and this could be, you know, these are broad statements, okay, and I'm not an attorney. But in theory, if someone broke into your house and you have to meet those three standards of you had no duty to retreat, you didn't create the situation, and you had a realistic expectation of death or serious physical harm, well, they broke into your house, so you didn't create the situation. You don't have a duty to retreat from your home. But that third one, realistic expectation of death or serious physical harm. Well, how do you know what's going to happen? They broke into your house. They might. But these are all possibilities of the way that the world could go. And I'm not gonna say one way or another what you should or shouldn't do, but these are the things to think about. You know, when you pick up a gun to defend yourself, that's absolutely fine. I'm in full support of it. But when you look at, you know, the possible outcomes that people never consider, so you get into a shooting, and it could be completely justified, but you're probably going to be arrested. You're probably going to go to court, and there's going to be things that even come down the pipe after that. You know, if you look at some of these famous shootings, and the court battles that happen afterwards, is your job going to wait for you? You know, if you can't work because you're in jail or you're in a legal issue, is the bank going to understand that and not take away your home? Is your spouse or significant other on the same moral page of use of force as far as religion, relationships, things like that go? You know, say by chance you end up doing a couple years in prison for whatever type of manslaughter or, you know, attempted murder, whatever. If the cards play out that way, you know, your kids, your grandkids, what are you going to miss? You know, is your significant other going to wait for you? You know, these are just one of those things that people never consider, that I try to, like, start to get people to think about. Because people, oh, I didn't think about missing 3 years of my kids' little league games. You know.
I just recalled something. I lived in an attic apartment, so it was a 3-store house on the west side, and there was only one way to get into the apartment and one way out. There was no emergency exit.
And you were going to provide like a ladder you could throw out a window or you drop 3 stories to get down to the ground.
And somebody broke in while I lived there, and something bad was about to take place, I won't say what. And I flipped off all the lights, and it was pitch black in there, and I grabbed my kitchen scissors. And they took them out of my hand and started cutting me with the scissors. What do you do in a situation like that? When you're in a 3rd floor attic apartment,
Well, I
there's
mean,
only one door to get in.
Yeah, this is
one door
the
to get out.
totality of circumstances. If you don't have any means to defend yourself, whether that's with a weapon or physical defense skills, I mean, they, at that point in time, you're
I've
just
never
being
thought of owning a gun, so it would be a lesser, more legal option than trying to have a gun. What would be a better option than that?
So, if you don't want to own a firearm, then basically law enforcement has what they call a use of force continuum. You just can't, you know, pull out your gun and shoot someone because they don't listen to you when you're a cop. You know, if a civilian doesn't want to own firearms, that's completely fine, that's their choice.
So what would be the next level of care that you care enough about
I
your,
mean,
your
you,
safety? So
you could
what's the
use
next level of
pepper
care
spray,
for that?
tasers, you know, impact weapons like a baseball bat, you know, whatever. That's,
'Cause I pulled out my kitchen scissors and the guy grabbed them and cut my shirt off and everything.
well, and that's a perfect example of
Even though it's
when you
pitch black in there, I don't know how he could see it.
when you start going this route of alternate weapons, you know, you start running into a lot of different things to consider. You know, the go-to for a lot of people is pepper spray. Well, pepper spray is a great tool. However, how far does it spread?
The only thing I have is a pepper grinder
Well,
in my kitchen, but I was in the other part. I wasn't at that room. I was at the office.
you know, there's a whole slew of less lethal options out there, but at the end of the day, you still need to get training on it. You know, people run to Walmart and they buy pepper spray, and it's like, okay, I'm good to go. Well, what direction is the wind? How far are you away from this person? What happens when you get cross-contaminated because you spray the guy, he wipes his face, and now he rubs it in your face? Yes?
I would say a thing about pepper spray, because a lot of people, you know, really rely on that. If you're going to carry pepper spray, I suggest you get sprayed, because chances are, it's gonna come back in your face, you're not gonna fight your way through it. If you were to spray somebody in the eyes and run away, okay, maybe. But if there's any chance you're still gonna have to remain there, I personally took it off my belt. Because I knew that I could not fight through it. I was so affected by it. And other guys it doesn't affect. Or I should say, I'm saying that generically, guys and girls, it really didn't affect, but I personally was so affected by it, I couldn't use it on the street, because I knew it would take me out of the fight, so.
And that's the thing, the captain is absolutely spot on. You know, people have this unrealistic expectation that everything's going to work out for them because they have, you know, a stun gun, or they have pepper spray, or they have the little spiky, punchy keyring things. Well, all of these options are great, but do you have any martial arts training? Anytime you go hands-on with anything, or anytime you're in a close proximity to a violent aggressor, that's a fight. You know, it's like when I explain to people in CCW classes how important it is for people to get medical training. They're like, well, why? Why should I get medical training? Because if you're going to carry a gun, there's a possibility you could be in a gunfight, and gunfights go both ways. You know, just because you carry a gun doesn't mean you're going to win. So that's something that people just, they don't even think about, because they don't want to think about it. That you could be severely injured. Yes?
Back to where you started the conversation at the beginning of the speech. You were talking about training or shooting and staying very proficient with your marksmanship. I think it's very important to stress that when you fire your CCW, you miss and that bullet strays off and hits somebody, you're legally responsible for where that bullet goes. That's what's very important about it, you making sure you keep up with the efficiency of your weapon.
Yeah. You know, and John is absolutely spot on. Again, that's a giant rabbit hole that we can get down to. But that's what people need to ask themselves. Are they an asset to society, or are they a liability to it? Because if you make uneducated, rash decisions, then it's going to end badly for it. You might shoot a bad guy and stop the threat, but if you shoot a kid on the other side of the Walmart parking lot, what did you do? You know, you saved your life, but then you also took an innocent life. You know, if you look at law enforcement shootings, cops have shot cops before, cops have shot civilians before, and all this stuff is taking place in an actual situation where, you know, there was a bad guy. You know, under stress, all this stuff changes. So that's the thing. If you're not taking your concealed carry seriously, if you're not taking your training seriously, and that's any training. That's not just shooting training. That's whether it's martial arts or whether it's, you know, just being turned on mentally and being situationally aware of things, or, you know, making sure that your marksmanship skills are squared away. But owning a gun and using a gun defensively isn't just marksmanship. There's a ton of things that go along with it. You know, anytime I ask someone, hey, you know, when was the last time you went to the shooting range? And they go, last week. And I go, okay, what did you practice? Well, I practiced shooting. Yeah, but what aspects of shooting did you practice? What do you mean? You know, it's more than discharging a gun at a target. And unfortunately, that's what target practice becomes to people, is they discharge a gun in the general direction of a target and hope for the best. They don't have the skills to train themselves. And that's where any education comes into play. This isn't just this type of education. If you apply this to any other type of education or vocation that you do, there's those little tiny processes are important. So, yes.
I actually had a comment about pepper spray and tasers. I own both. And I have to say, from a practical standpoint, they're incredibly practical. I leave for work in the morning and it's dark, and we've had had some unsavory people in the neighborhood, that's why these were purchased to begin with. They're impractical, they would be hard to use if you needed to, because you've got your arms full of stuff, and you've got your taser, and you've got your pepper spray, and you can't juggle it all, and you have to be able to pull it out, and they're not practical. I've actually stopped carrying them because it's not worth it.
Well,
I'd rather punch you in the face than try and get at my pepper spray.
well, that just comes down to many things. Close proximity to assailant, the fact that now you're working in a low light environment. The lack of light changes absolutely everything. And, again, I'm not here to talk about shooting, but, shooting in a low light environment is extremely important. If you're gonna carry a gun, are you gonna carry a flashlight too? Probably not. Okay, well, what happens when you need to identify, someone that's in your backyard and it's dark, or someone that's in your garage and it's dark? You just can't shoot something because you're scared.
And those objects, you need to be right on top of the person to be effective with them. The taser in particular, you have to be able to touch them. I'd really prefer not to get that
Yeah,
close.
generally speaking, if you don't have good situational awareness, you're not gonna see it coming, and it's going to be at 0 feet, and it's gonna be hands-on. And so if you don't have, basic self-defense skills, and I'm not talking about taking ladies' self-defense, class, with your girlfriends, once in your life.
10 years ago.
Yeah, it's pointless there. All of these things that we're talking about are diminishing skills. And if you don't train with them, if you don't think about it, then it goes away, like any other skill. Yes.
When I lived in that West Side apartment, that was between 2008 and 2011, and my dad had got what's that NRA? I forget what the NRA used to be, of course,
The National Rifleman Association.
So he became part of that, so he was working on that type of thing. He was maybe considering me getting a gun, he said, because of what I was going through and where I was at, and emotionally, he didn't feel that I would be able to handle a gun. So do these people that go and they wanted to come to you and take classes or get concealed carry weapons, do they get their mental checked before they're
No.
allowed to do that?
Nope, not at all. See, here's the thing, and I kind of compare it to driver's ed a little bit. I'm your driver's ed instructor. I personally think it's the state's job to be able to know that you guys are squared away physically, mentally. I can't not give you a CCW license because you're in a wheelchair. I can't not give you a CCW license because you're missing an arm. There's a lot of things that, if you're not doing something outlandishly crazy in my class and you pass, and there's even a written test portion to reference her question before. So it's very up in the air, who can get it. You take the class and you get it most of the time. And you could pay a lot of money and get a poor quality class and still get your license. So, you have a question?
But there is no mental screening for that.
No, but if you've been adjudicated mentally defective, that's the proper term of saying that, been in a nut house or, they know that you're suicidal or something. That takes away your rights to own firearms for a certain period of time. But again, that's neither here nor there. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention that in fear of your life is not in fear of your pet. I'm sorry, they can kill your pet, but you still can't kill them.
That's her property.
Right.
That's her property. Now, if you're walking your dog and someone comes up and shoots your dog, that gives you a reasonable expectation that you're in danger. But, if some neighborhood kids are throwing rocks at your dog or whatever, that's damaged property. So.
shameless promotion of your business, what the name of the company is, and pass out cards to anybody who wants.
Yeah, again, my name is Rich Hart. I own Lampus Security Consulting. It's lampustrading.com.
Could you spell that?
Lampas.
You have cards also?
Yep, I have a big stack of cards up here. I'm sure you guys are gonna go home and lay in bed awake at night, like thinking of my talk and have all kinds of questions. So, you know, when you wake up in the middle of the night, jot them down. You can give me a call, text, or email, and I'll do the best I can to help you guys out. My schedule's on there. I actually have 2 classes coming up, Friday and Saturday. So, one of the classes that we teach most that actually gets a really good turnout is we do a 4-hour trauma care training. You know, so this is, you know, whether you're on the shooting range or whether you see a car crash on the side of the road or whether there's a, you know, industrial accident somewhere. You know, we teach people in 4 hours for the most part, you know, to stabilize these victims until they can get to care. Because sometimes people only have minutes to live if they're that injured. So, but we do those once or twice a month as well. So. What else? All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your time. Once you go to the park, the rest of here, I'll hang out for a little while if you guys want to ask any more questions.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, we're gonna try and, I'm gonna shoot for a Tuesday next month. We've heard a lot of people complaining that Wednesdays are terrible for them. So we're gonna try and shoot for a, I think Wednesday, Thursday, third I was looking at. I'm gonna talk with Reservoir here as we leave about that. Also, I wanted to mention, you know, yes, we have signs up here. We have block captain manuals available that will tell you what the city of Akron's looking for our block captains. I mean, as you know, each of these are supposed to be smaller block watches that are all joined into kind of one where we all talk to each other. And I hate bringing this up because it sounds tacky. It costs money to run this program. So if anybody is able to donate once in a while, that would be great because we're, you know, getting training materials, we get snacks and stuff for here and whatever other expenses we're running into, that would be awesome. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next month. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Captain Weitzel. Appreciate it.